Today's video, as feisty as it'll be, is brought to you by Life Change Tea. All natural, organic ingredients, non-GMO, no caffeine, amazingly tasty tea. Super strength Life Change Tea gets things moving for you, aids in cleansing some buildup down there, occasional digestive slowdown, and makes you feel like a new you. Drop a few pounds, drink this amazing tea. Go to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com and check it out. Hope everybody can hear me. All right, so look, if you aren't open to my, commentary, if you don't want to hear my opinion on some things, if you're not necessarily here to hear anything other than just the cut and dry facts on this, probably not the video for you guys. You could probably leave and come back later and skip through to the parts that you want to hear. But I would be remiss if I didn't address the kind of overall feeling of what's going on today and explain to you guys what my perspective is, because honestly, as much as I'm a journalist and I take this all very seriously and I am just the facts ma'am type of person, there's a lot of emotion here, a lot of emotion wrapped up in this, and it's frustrating as all get out. For me personally, just as a human being, I need you guys to understand that I have my own feelings about what's going on here, and to be reading the comments, it's wearing on me. I need to get it off my chest. I can't not double negative, bad. I can't not say this stuff, and I hope that you guys are okay with it. And if you're not, I understand too. You can close the video if I piss you off, or if I say something you don't like, or if you're mad, or if you say whatever. I don't care. Just go away from it, and then maybe later on you guys can come back and listen to it if you want to, or it's up to you. So let's start off in the beginning. So I did a thread this morning on this. It's going to be a long video, guys. I'm telling you now, I'm going to be talking a long time. So understand that. I started this out this morning by doing a thread about what I thought would be coming in this report today and explaining a few different things that I found important, and I'm scrolling through to try and find them now. I'm going to go, here it is. Okay. Because I wanted to kind of set the expectation from my perspective. Listen, I'm not some know-it-all, okay? I'm really not. I'm not some know-it-all. I'm not some authority for you to bow down and listen to. I'm just one person sharing their perspective on this who happens to spend nearly 24 hours of their day doing this. And so, take that for what it's worth to you. Honestly, I'm not trying to scold anybody or yell at anyone or anything like that. Just understand that, just like you guys have emotions, so do I. I say here, many have said we're getting the IG report today on James Comey and his leaking, and I wanted to do a quick thread to share some expectations from my perspective. Hannity mentions the report will be 65 pages. It was a little over 80, but it was kind of 65 juice pages, so to speak. This is basically a spin-off report about the memos, just the memos. And I kind of point to the fact that there's always little things in these reports hidden in footnotes in one sentence here or one sentence there that give you a much broader perspective on what's happening and even uncover crazy stories. So I mention here that my big thread on the Wiener laptop came from one sentence in the Andrew McCabe OIG report. So I say kind of where the legacy rubble media will tell you guys the basics. Just pay attention to the details because they're really important. And there's a lot of hysteria out there that's based on lies. And it's frustrating for me to see, because if we're going to get upset about something and be frustrated and angry about it, or, there's one crowd that just kind of wipes their hands and says, oh, well, who gives a shit, and walks away. And then there's another crowd that kind of says, I can't believe this, but it's based on untruths. And some of the more reputable people that I know are doing it, and it's really annoying. I'm like, at least tell people what's happening. Don't make crap up. Like, making stuff up at this point in time is not helpful to anybody. Anyway, so I say in here that Solomon had a few weeks ago, John Solomon came out and told us that that AG Barr and the DOJ decided not to indict Comey or pursue criminal charges over his leaking of the memos, over his taking of the memos off site, etc., so on and so forth. And in this IG report today, we learn a lot of things. Number one is that James Comey has several skiffs inside of his house. That's number one. And it lends into a whole bunch of other things we're going to talk about when we go through the report. But before we get to the report, I need to talk about other things. So there is an article here, which is going to play automatically, by Solomon, where he explains why it is that they decided not to charge Comey with these crimes. And I was furious when they first announced it. And I said, hold on, let me take a breath for a second and understand the legal ramifications here of what this means and why. And I'll be honest with you. It makes sense. Hate me, throw arrows at my head. I'm sorry. It makes legal sense. It does. And I'm going to show you why in a second. Because Undercover Huber, let me duplicate this. I'm going to sing to you while I wait. Here we go. Comey skates on the leaking of classified information. Quote, we found no evidence that Comey or his attorneys released any of the classified information contained in any of the memos to members of the media. Since this is the key phrase Comey has latched onto, I'll explain. Comey leaked the contents of a classified memo to his attorneys, the dinner to Trump one, which was the second memo in the IG report. One of those attorneys, which was Richmond, then leaked the contents of the memo to the New York Times, but didn't leak the classified portions, which were also redacted. He's not skating. I don't like that word. I want you guys to listen very carefully here as we explain this. Richmond had a security clearance between 2015 and 2017, top secret security clearance. He quit the FBI in February of 2017, but wasn't, quote, read out until July of that year, meaning he technically had a clearance when Comey leaked the classified dinner memo to him. So Richmond didn't have a need to know, wasn't working for the FBI, but did have a clearance that hadn't lapsed yet. So Comey just about gets away with giving him classified information. He retained his clearance until he was, quote, read out, which means like they kind of finalize things and say goodbye, you're on your way. Comey gave him this memo during the time where he had his clearance. Since Memo 2 was actually retrospectively classified by the FBI, Comey couldn't have known which parts were classified when he leaked it to Richmond, and Richmond wouldn't have known either. So the FBI in July of 2017 went back to these memos and then reclassified them the right way. So when Comey did the action of leaking this memo to Richmond, it technically was not classified the same way as it was when the FBI went back around, the small group we'll talk about, and reclassified everything. So despite skating on the crime, technically not committing the crime, and I want you guys to understand, let's pretend the DOJ said, you know what? Screw it. Facts be damned. The success of the case be damned. Everything else be damned. Everybody out there in America wants us to indict somebody. So we're going to slap the cuffs on Jim Comey for leaking criminal classified information, even though when it comes down to it and we get in front of the judge in the court of law, they're going to be able to prove that he had no idea it was classified when he leaked it because he considered it personal. By golly, he even kept it in a personal safe. The dude was smart about what he did. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. It is what it is. This is how Comey conducted himself. He's a doofus, but he's not, okay? And they didn't have a strong enough case. So they indict Comey for leaking classified information. They haul him into court, and then he's found innocent by a jury of his peers in Washington, D.C., where they're all clamoring for an innocent verdict. First of all, what a waste. Second of all, what will that do for you people? Third of all, how does that set up the rest of what's coming? And no, I'm not talking about some grand plan or masterful thing that's all laid out in advance. I'm talking strictly and factually about the FISA investigation that is clearly ongoing right now. Clearly. How does that set up the Justice Department indicting on a crime that they know they won't get a conviction on just to pacify people out there who are clamoring for someone to get indicted? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. It doesn't. It doesn't mean that Barr is deep state. It doesn't mean that Trump is a sitting duck. It doesn't mean any of the things that I see floating around right now. And they're all emotional responses when you have a fact set in front of you that you can stop and look at to make the determination logically why it is they decided to not indict James Comey for this. And I'm really sorry, but he doesn't have a case here. There's not a strong enough case because Comey, in all of his evil shittiness, excuse my French, didn't handle himself in the right way to get around this. And he just did. He had classification authority. He decided at the time what classification level these memos had. Later, after he had determined that they were not classified or unclassified or or whatever, just unofficial use or whatever, he was the one who made those decisions. And then he took the information and treated it as per he made those classifications. And then later on, retroactively, the team there looked at the information and changed some of those classifications. So I'm seeing this hystericalness, and it's really as a person, as a human, as an American citizen, not as my analytical, normal, what you usually see of myself. And I'm making a very strong distinction here. I'm making a very strong distinction because I want you to know that this is my feeling and my opinion, and I'm being raw with you guys, all right? I'm just being raw, okay? Me as a person, I'm looking at all of this stuff and I'm saying to myself, empathetically, I understand the frustration out there better than you guys could ever imagine. I see this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in every comment under my videos, in every article that I write, people saying things like there are a faction of people that are just fed up and they're ready to walk and they don't care anymore and they're convinced that nothing's going to ever change. And I'm saying to myself from that empathetic perspective, I get it. And I feel horrible because I know what that feeling of despair feels like because I felt it myself so many times. Like for years now, before you guys probably even knew, most of you, what the heck was even happening before your eyes. I know some of you listening out there understand what I mean. I felt like I was screaming at a wall and nobody would ever understand how deep this corruption actually went. And then all of a sudden, in 2016, that all changed. So, I'm going to take a sip of water. I am not sitting here telling you guys that everything's going to be okay, that everyone's going to be indicted. I don't have a crystal ball, okay? I don't have a crystal ball in front of me where I can look into it like a psychic. I don't have inside sources crawling around the Beltway. I don't have that stuff. What I do have is the ability to separate the facts from the hysteria. And I want you guys to try, if you give a crap about what I'm saying. I don't want you to feel like I'm preaching at you. And I know that it's stupid to disclaim that, but I need to because I feel it. I just want you to separate the hysteria from the facts and just take a deep breath. We have an IG report in front of us today that is absolutely, it excoriates Jim Comey in the strongest of terms. We also have a bunch of people saying that Horowitz did nothing. And I'm like banging my head against my hands. Like, what are you talking about? What are you even talking about? Horowitz and his team, if you take the time to read this document, crossed every T and dotted every I. Horowitz recommended or referred for criminal action on this because he felt there were laws broken. The DOJ decided not to prosecute for the reasons that we spoke about. And we have people saying, oh, Horowitz let him skate again. What? I'm sorry? What? First of all, Horowitz has literally zero power or authority to charge anybody with anything. So the fact that the IG actually wrote this is a win. If there was nothing happening and nothing being uncovered, then we never would have even gotten this report. Like, does anybody see that, or am I crazy? So here, like, there's no gray area in this thing, okay? There's just not. He's wrong. Comey is a smug and horrible, disgusting, slimy guy. And there's nothing that's going to change that. His holier than thou tweeting, his standing in cornfields, his looking up at the sky. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And there's much more than just this. I mean, this is literally just 8 memos he wrote. There's so much more. And we're going to see it all. And I just want to go through before I get going into actually what was in here. Is this. Bear with me. Got a little feisty in this thread, guys, because it's just so much. Like, there are good reasons why James Comey is not being prosecuted criminally. Somebody said, well, why twist in knots? It's all for nothing. And I just want to tell you something. It's not all for nothing. Even if nothing ever happens criminally in this entire thing, it is not for nothing. This matters. Us talking about it matters. Us understanding how it happened matters. Us making sure other people understand how it happened matters. How lazy is it to just wipe your hands and give up and walk away because you feel like things aren't getting done the way you'd like them to? If we act like that, we deserve more of this because this is our country, okay? It's our country, not theirs. They don't run, they don't own this joint. We do. For God's sakes, people. Public awareness is literally crucial to all of this. It is so important. If we just let this go, nothing will ever change and it will get way worse. You think it's bad now? It will get way worse. And what will we have to thank? We'll have to thank everybody wiping their hands, saying nothing's ever going to happen, no one's ever going to go to jail, and then going back to whatever they were doing before and pretending as though our country is not a corrupt, crazy monstrosity of what it's supposed to be. And who does that rest on? It doesn't rest on Donald Trump. It doesn't rest on William Barr. It doesn't rest on Horowitz. It rests on you. Straight up. I'm sorry. Like, this is your place to live. This is where you live. This is the country you live in. If you say you care about it, start acting like it and stop giving up every time you think something doesn't go your way. Personal venting. I'm sorry. I had to say it. Buck up, buttercups. It's just the beginning. Okay? It's just the beginning. Don't count on other people to handle your crap for you. It's our country. They represent us. We hold them accountable. Understand your power. And a good portion of it rests in your mouth and in your fingers and in your ability to tell people what the hell's going on. And then collectively, if everybody decides that they don't want to deal with it, okay, we reap what we sow. We reap what we sow. Now, with that all being said, my apologies. Let's get into the IG report, shall we? We shall. Okay. I feel better now. It's like I'm on a couch. I feel like I'm a therapist. I was like laying on the couch. All right. Off we go, folks, because there's a whole lot in here from a factual standpoint that I'd like to go over with you. So if you can stomach it and you can put your big girls and boy pants on, stick with me for the rest of this video and we will go over some of the more poignant threads that I found inside of it. Now, this is just what I found inside the report. So my next step investigatively is to take a step back and then begin to loop in timelines, okay? Like when was, Finch in the library on Telegram. If you guys are not there, I recommend you go. It's a great place to be. I'll put the link on my Twitter account and in the description box later. Finch in the library, mentioned a good point about, when was Lisa Page talking to, Michael Horowitz about the McCabe leaks? And how does that weave in here on a timeline standpoint? So I just need to get all of that stuff kind of lined up in my head, and we'll probably do a lot of that on the podcast tomorrow and a bunch of this too. But this is a point that I often make and goes largely ignored, okay? Sometimes you see FOIA groups like Judicial Watch with the amazing work that they do. And they'll go on Twitter or they'll go on interviews on Fox or wherever, and they'll say, Trump's Justice Department is still withholding these documents from us and won't let us have them. There's still obstruction. They're still keeping this from us and we deserve to have it. And it kind of fires everybody up and gets everybody angry that they're withholding these documents under FOIA. But I wanted to show in the very beginning of the IG report, here you see on footnote 4, which is where you find a lot of really good information. It says 11 months after Comey disclosed the contents of Memo 4 to the Times through Richmond, the department provided all of the memos in redacted form to the committees, the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, blah, 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 blah. Separately, in 2017, a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit was brought by a media organization in the U.S. District Court for D.C. in an effort to obtain copies of the memos. And this is the lawsuit that a lot of us have been talking about lately, Technofog, etc., where it states, we're going to release the memos unredacted and when and all that stuff. So in 2018, the court determined that the memos were not subject to release at the time due to the department's ongoing criminal investigation. After the conclusion in June 2019, after the conclusion of the criminal investigation, the court determined that the memo should be released, but permitted a limited number of redactions. So basically, what I'm saying here is sometimes when documents aren't released under FOIA, especially now, you can kind of back engineer your way into why. And a lot of the times figure out, like I went over in my FOIA review, that they're being used in ongoing investigations. So put that in perspective as we kind of move along here about why documents are sometimes withheld in these suits. Andrew McCabe was the one who referred this to the IG for review in 2017 after they determined that Comey gave his memos to his attorneys that had classified information. So they go through the classification as a small group. It's McCabe, Page, Strzok. Sound familiar? Pre-Step, I believe, was involved. We'll get into that in a second. They all sit down. They work with some other folks. They look through the classifications and they decide whether they're going to up classify things or down classify things. And they decide that they are going to add classification to some things that were not. And after that, during the time where James Comey is in Congress and he's sitting in front of Congress and he's testifying, forget which committee it was under, he says that he gave these things to his attorneys and everybody looks at each other and they're like, what? Because supposedly they had no idea that he had also given these to other people. So they run at that point, and they say, all right, well, now we need an IG investigation because now we have these classifications. And this stuff, here we go. Let me just see something really quickly. Okay. So in the beginning, when I was reviewing this, there's a timeline in here and it goes through and it says when things were done. And it says on May 14th, he sent scanned copies to his attorneys and they knew that these copies were forwarded to other attorneys, David Kelly and Richmond. And I picked that out immediately because to me, I thought to myself, okay, how does the IG, which is a government-run entity, how do they know what Richmond forwarded, because Richmond's not a government employee anymore, what these attorneys forwarded to one another unless they're working with some kind of prosecutorial or DOJ arm to come to those conclusions and subpoena the emails or however they figure it out. And I immediately said, in my brief reading of this right now, I'm thinking that this is because they're working with a U.S. attorney. I was wrong. It's not because of that. So this beginning part here where I say that, just disregard, because it ends up that the FBI themselves are the ones that figure this out. So another quasi-entrapment here. This really bothered me a lot. It made me kind of angry. Baker and McCabe told the OIG they raised and discussed with Comey a number of concerns about Comey meeting alone with the president. Baker and McCabe said they agreed about the briefing needing to be one-on-one so Comey could present the, quote, salacious information in the most discreet and least embarrassing way. At the same time, we were told they did not want the president-elect to perceive a one-on-one briefing as an effort to hold information over him like a Hoover-esque type of plot. That may be fine, but listen to the next sentence. Witnesses interviewed by the OIG also said that they discussed Trump's potential responses to being told about the information, including that Trump might make statements about or provide information of value to the pending Russian interference investigation. In other words, it may make sense for you to interview him alone because he may say something we can use in our other investigation. It gets worse than that. They were basically setting Trump up by informing him about this. Multiple FBI witnesses recalled agreeing ahead of time that Comey should memorialize his meeting with Trump immediately after it occurred. Comey told the IG that in his view, it was important for FBI executive managers to be able to share in his recall of the, quote, salient details of those conversations. Comey also said that an additional concern shared by the members of his management team was that if the briefing became a source of controversy, it would be important to have a clear contemporaneous record because Trump might misrepresent what happened. I need to lower my air conditioning, which means I'm taking a 2-second run to the wall. Stand by. My apologies. Sorry about that. Note that in this next section, Comey doesn't create a memo about the call he had with Donald Trump where he's concerned about the media reports of the dossier. He engineered those media leaks. So if he would have had memorialized Trump's being worried about them, it wouldn't have looked good for the set of memos that he had created for a very specific purpose. And they talk about that here. Trump calls them and say, hey, these leaks are pretty bad. We got to get a handle on these things, guys. We'd better get our arms around this. Can you please stop these leaks, James Comey at the FBI? Again, this has been in the memos, which we've gone over several times, but it says a portion of Memo 2 summarizes a discussion between Trump and Comey concerning the, quote, salacious material, and Trump wondering whether he should ask Comey to investigate the whole thing to prove it was a lie. In other words, Comey, would you do me a favor? Please investigate this damn dossier, because none of this stuff is true, especially not the fact that I went to some hotel in Moscow and had people pee on the same bed that Obama slept in. Okay? Why wouldn't James Comey want to do that? Why wouldn't James Comey want to investigate the dossier to make sure it was true? He says, no, Mr. President. We don't want to make the impression that we're investigating you, and that's not necessary. Meanwhile, they're doing it already while telling him they're not. Comey doesn't leak Memo 3 because it contains damning information for him and others at the FBI regarding a FISA on Flynn. He considered it to be classified because it contained discussion about FISA orders. He didn't put anything on the memo itself when he wrote it to classify it. He printed 2 originals from an FBI printer, and this is important because sometimes he prints them at home, sometimes he prints them in the FBI, sometimes he puts them in a safe, it depends, right? It all depends on what Comey's feeling like that day. So he prints 2 originals from an FBI printer, initials them. Very important here. I want you to remember this, okay? He keeps 1 original in his desk at the FBI and gives the other original to Rybicki with instructions to show it to McCabe and Baker, then take it and keep it. Comey tells the OIG, other than providing the original to Rybicki to show McCabe and Baker, he did not give it to anyone else. He considered it to be classified, so he didn't store it at home, but did store it in his desk at FBI headquarters. The desk drawer where he kept it had no lock, but the whole office was a skiff that was alarmed, locked, and approved for, quote, open storage, so he would never have to put away classified information. This is important to remember for several reasons, which we're going to get to very shortly, but it's very important. He took it and he put it in his desk, and that's not the only one that he does that with, okay? I'm starting to briefly hypothesize at this point that Flynn stepping down wasn't necessarily all because he lied to Pence, which I'm still not even clear that he did, and more because they knew that there was an active FISA on Flynn. Because they tried every which way from Sunday to get some kind of human source inside the Trump administration, transition, whatever. We have evidence of that. And I have a little bit allergy stuff acting up. Hold on one second. I just had a cough. So on February 14th, 2017, Comey drafts a 2-page memo regarding his interactions in the Oval Office during a multi-person briefing and then a one-on-one meeting with Trump. These meetings occurred 1 day after Michael Flynn resigned as Trump's national security advisor. He had no expectation he'd be meeting with the president alone and having a one-on-one conversation. But the next day, he does. And if you remember, it was Reince Priebus who asked James Comey directly if there was a FISA on Flynn. So I really am now toying with the idea that Trump knew somehow, even if we don't ever know if Comey told the president that there was a FISA on Flynn or not. We don't get that information yet. I'm just starting to think that they knew that there was a FISA on Flynn, and so they negotiated, let me leave so that they don't have, everything. Comey knew Sessions would be recusing 2 weeks before he actually did recuse. Let me say this unequivocally for the record. A lot of people say, well, you were the person that told us that Sessions was such a good guy. I was never okay. It's going to be hard to explain this. Sessions did a lot of really good things. There is no bottom line, Marianne. There's no bottom line to this. This is not going to be a very quick 1 minute. This is what happened, because it's impossible to do that with this. If that's what you're looking for, not the right place. Just flat out. I don't want you to waste all your time. So Marianne in the comments is saying, what's the bottom line? Not the right video. Not the right video. So here he says, Attorney General Sessions will likely recuse himself from involvement in the Russia-related investigations. And then the IG puts in, he did so 2 weeks later. Actually, that was Comey that wrote that. So in June, Comey writes a statement to the SSCI, and he says he discussed with the leadership team at the FBI on his February 14th, 2017 interaction with the president. He says he and the leadership team decided not to report the conversation to the AG or the DAG because Sessions would likely recuse himself from involvement in Russia-related investigations. Now, I don't know how they knew that. Maybe it was common sense saying, well, he was on the campaign, so he'll have to recuse himself. Maybe it was because Sessions had told some people. I don't know. The president says he didn't know. After discussing the matter, they decided to keep it very closely held and not tell anyone. But Jim Comey knew 2 weeks before that he was probably going to do it. So there's more to investigate there. All Comey ever says is that he wants to protect himself and protect the FBI. And it's really annoying because the FBI is not like some separate government that operates above the rest of the government. It's a part of a branch of the executive. So this culture of like protecting the bureau, like even Ray is guilty of, is sick. Enough is enough with that nonsense. I'm done with it. I don't want to hear anyone say that they're protecting the FBI ever again. Clearly, the people protecting the FBI are not good people, and they're not protecting the agents, many of which don't even know what the heck is going on up there in secret and dark hallways. I'm not saying, I just want it to end. Like, enough of it. I don't want to read it ever again. If I never read it again, I would be fine. I know how FISA works. Somebody's saying that's not how FISA works. Hold on, I'm scrolling up. Once they had Flynn, they had everyone within 2 hops, back in time, unlimited. Yes, that's a good point. I understand what you're saying there. But at the same time, do you want somebody who has an active FISA warrant on them currently dealing with world leaders, etc., while there's an active FISA and bad guys that are not out for the nation's good are listening in? Like, do you understand what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. I know they can get the retroactive stuff. I know they can go back. I understand. But that's what I'm saying. Okay. So this is an interesting one. Baker told the OIG that with respect to Comey's interactions with Trump, Baker, quote, would have an oral conversation with Comey about what had happened, and Comey would say something along the lines of, Rybicki has the memo. If you want to look at it, go get a copy from him. Baker said that sometimes Rybicki would give him a copy of a memo, and sometimes Rybicki would give him the original, which Baker would read and give back. And they go through all of how they handled these memos amongst themselves in this very tiny little group of people. And sometimes even read them in a skiff. He told the IG that at the time, it was his understanding that the small group of people who had access to the memos, quote, really didn't want anyone to know the director was recording at this level of detail his interactions with the president, because any perception that Comey was keeping book on the president would upset any effort to have an effective and ongoing working relationship. Not only that, it would stop him from talking to these people because he knows that they're... Jeez. According to Baker, one of the reasons no one conducted a contemporaneous classification review of the memos was that, as a practical matter, only 4 or 5 people actually knew about them before Comey was removed. Baker said he didn't worry about the classification because he believed they were not going to go out the door of the FBI. He also said that at the time he presumed Comey was keeping copies in his office somewhere. Very important, okay? In his office somewhere. Again. And didn't know that Comey was storing any copies of the memos at his home. Baker told the IG he, quote, just assumed the memos were government records because they related to official business. Translation of that is basically, we really shouldn't be doing this because it's shady, so we're going to keep it a big secret because if we want to get him, he's going to have to think that we can trust us. Next. Another confirmation of the, quote, entrapment that I called it regarding the dossier, the single most important thing, because the FISA warrant on Carter Page was completely based on the dossier. So McCabe forwarded the memo to Page, memo 1. Lisa Page, not Carter Page. Page told the IG that Comey had met with the team conducting the Russia investigation after his meeting with Trump, and both told us of the substance, and also forwarded the memo to members of the team to upload into the case file because it was central to investigative activity. So that first memo gets uploaded into the case system, but McCabe allows Page to see the other ones, but don't do anything with them. Page then decides that on her own, she decided to make and keep copies of them because they were, quote, just of the nature that she felt like there should be one other copy somewhere else. What? She told the OIG that she didn't know if others in the FBI were keeping copies of the memos. She told us that she kept her copies in her office, which was a skiff inside of her safe. So we have Lisa Page, against the orders of her superior, making copies of Jim Comey's memos and storing them in a safe. Interesting. A quick aside. Oh, yeah, I'm not even going to go into that. That's just another headache. As if you needed more proof of the Lawfare blog loyalties and where these motivations come from these people, here, Benjamin Wittes, the editor-in-chief of Lawfare blog, wrote an article on May 18th, 2017, describing what Comey had told him about Comey's interactions with Trump. In the article, he describes a lunch he had with Comey and all of the little embarrassing details. All the little embarrassing details that he shared about what Trump did and the hug and the... You know what, Wittes, you're a tool, okay? You're a tool. Everybody knows it. Nobody should even give them a second thought. Toolbox. Just saying. I really think here in these 2 big footnotes where they talk about, it comes up later in the conclusion, but these 2 big footnotes here are about Yates testifying in front of the committee about the investigation into Flynn. And this is really important here because, okay, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, which was run by Devin Nunes, invited Yates to testify on March 28th, 2017 in an open hearing into the Russian active measures campaign. And in advance, her counsel contacted the Department of Justice regarding the hearing, her ability to testify about her communications while she was Deputy Attorney General, and also went to the White House counsel to ask them what, if anything, was privileged that she couldn't say, to make sure that she stayed within the lines and didn't release anything that would indicate too strongly or going above and beyond that Flynn was under investigation. But she does mention it in there, that Flynn is under investigation. And that's important when we get to the later end of the report, which it's not that much more, guys, but I'm just saying. So they throw these 2 big footnotes in here, and they're like just basically telling us that, like, Sally Yates was even really careful to not talk about an investigation into Flynn. And then Jim Comey does the same thing when he testifies and is very careful not to talk about an investigation into Flynn. And then at the end, basically Jim Comey leaks a memo that declares to the world that there's an investigation into Flynn. And so it basically it cuts down Jim Comey's excuses about why he leaked the memos. It just doesn't make any sense. We'll get to that part in a minute, but I wanted to summarize it to him. Now, this next one, I just wanted to point out that this is indicative of a lot of people who don't trust each other. The way that they're going through this stuff. They're acting outside of one another. They're doing things that other people don't know about. They're answering questions as though they're unsure of what other people are saying. Rybicki told the OIG that on the morning, and these dates are all important, I have to throw them into a timeline again. If anybody wants to take that upon themselves and help me out, by all means, throw these dates into a timeline for me. Because it's a lot of work and a lot of time. Rybicki told the OIG that on the morning of Wednesday, May 10th, Paige contacted him to request a full set of the memos. Now, remember, Paige had made a copy of these memos. She had them herself hiding in a freaking safe, in a skiff, in her office. Just saying. Rybicki said he had, quote, asked her if the request was coming from McCabe, and she said yes. Rybicki said he was surprised when he learned that Paige already had some copies of the memos because he, quote, didn't think anybody maintained a copy other than him and didn't know how she got them. Rybicki told the IG that in response to Paige's request, he made 3 sets of copies, one for himself, one for Paige to give to McCabe, and one for Baker. He said he distributed the copies, but he kept one set of the copies and the originals in a locked drawer in his office desk. Rybicki told the IG that other than Memo 1, none of these originals or copies had any classification markings on them. Remember what Memo 1 is. Memo 1 is the memo that talks about the dossier. Priestap told the IG that he received copies of the memos from Paige. Now, it doesn't say in here that Paige was instructed by McCabe to give these memos to Priestap. And here's where I'm telling you this, okay? Priestap and Paige. Keep those two together for a second while we go through this. Priestap told the IG that he received copies of the memos from Paige. Priestap's then Deputy Assistant Director for the Counterintelligence Division, Peter Strzok, told the IG that Priestap instructed him to upload the memos into the Sentinel case management system, an instruction that Strzok said he understood to be relayed from McCabe and Baker. Now, McCabe and Baker, I don't believe, we never learn in here, it never says, yeah, okay. I'm going to explain this to you guys. It's complicated. Priestap and Paige are working alone here. Just understand. I know it sounds weird, but they are. They're working alone together. Priestap and Paige are working in tandem. McCabe, Baker, and Strzok and all of them are unaware of that fact, in my opinion, by reading this, okay? So all of these guys, Baker assumes that McCabe asked Priestap to tell Strzok to put it into the system. Strzok just does it because Priestap says so and he's his boss, but he thinks it's coming from McCabe. Meanwhile, none of that's happening. Lisa Page hands the memos over to Priestap. Everyone assumes she's taking them from McCabe, but she gives them to Priestap. Page tells the IG she didn't think McCabe asked her to assemble the copies. She thought she did it on her own because she knew it needed to get done. And then what we're going to see in a couple of minutes is that a whistleblower provides these memos to the IG. I really think that Priestap and Paige smell something rotten. Paige knows she's done if she doesn't start doing something here. She's a smart lady. And Priestap, I think, was singing the entire time. So everybody thinks everybody else is telling them from a certain authority, and they're not. They're just doing this on their own. Priestap retired, but he's still there. The next paragraph, and what I wanted to say is like, again, I'm going to say this again, like one of the things that I think I keep stressing a lot and I want people to understand is why it is important for the public to have this information, and why is it important for the public to use this information to educate others, and why is it important for independent media like Epoch Times and Uncover DC and, all of these other outlets to report what we're talking about here, because it spurs on congressional investigations. And when this stuff is public, guess what else it does? It removes leverage. And these people have literally zero loyalty to anybody but themselves. The only thing that keeps them in line is what somebody else has to hang over their head. And when you remove all of those things, there's no more leverage. And everybody's flailing around like little bugs on their backs trying to figure out how to save themselves. All of the FBI senior leaders interviewed by the IG stated that the memos were official government records. For example, McCabe described this set of memos as a record of Comey's official engagement with the president that was created in his role as the FBI director. Baker told us they were related to official business and discussed in the office in connection with official responsibilities. Rybicki told the IG that since Comey's removal, he had treated the memos as FBI records. He also said he could never remember Comey indicating to him that he viewed the memos as personal papers. Priestap characterized the memos as documents, quote, produced by the director in his capacity as director, FBI work product. They all flipped on Comey. They threw Comey under the bus faster than you can even blink in this one paragraph. They completely wiped their hands of Comey right there. Who wants to be connected to Comey? Anyone? Not me, not me. Personal. These were government documents. Personal? Are you kidding me? That's everybody at the FBI. Now, this part is interesting to me. So if Comey retained his group of attorneys, which it says in the report, very shortly after his termination, and then Comey tells us that the article in the New York Times regarding the loyalty that the president supposedly requested from Comey wasn't sanctioned for a leak by him. Wouldn't that be considered a breach of attorney-client privilege? Like, Comey brings his attorneys on board, and then one of his attorneys leaks the contents of a memo without Comey's direction. Isn't that a breach of privilege? That doesn't make much sense to me. Something's off there. Like, I know Comey throughout this report says that he's not intending on enforcing like his privilege. He's not intending on invoking privilege in his working with his attorneys, all four of them. But Comey stated that Richmond was not speaking to the New York Times at Comey's direction for the May 11th article about loyalty. Then on the 12th, after that comes out, President Trump released a tweet stating, Comey better hope there are no tapes of the conversation. I remember that day. I really do. Then, there's this one very dramatic part of the report where James Comey says at 2 a.m. he shot up in bed. Oh, my God. My God. I can't believe this. If he's got tapes, we need to get them out so that I can prove that what I'm saying is true. Enough. There is a whistleblower who had all of the memos. Shortly after Comey's removal, a set of the 7 memos was provided to the IG by a department employee who claimed whistleblower status. This individual viewed the memos as extremely sensitive documents and was concerned that there should be a separate set deposited somewhere for safekeeping. The IG handled and stored all 7 memos consistent with the requirements for classified information, even though only Memo 1 had any classification markings at the time. Who was the leaker? Who was the whistleblower? Whistleblower. That is per the IG. I think it was Page and or Priestap and or both. I really do. I think it was Page. And again, Finch does a really good job of working through this too. And we were kind of bouncing this off of each other in our little research room that we have. pinging each other for dates and trying to put this together. And I was reading this report and also the McCabe report, and I just kind of put it aside for a minute. But again, I'm sure that he'll allow me to share his thoughts later on because they're important. This part here is important to remember because it's the only time he does this. He shreds a redacted copy of the 7th memo after he scans it and sends it out. It's the only one he shreds, and I'm going to come back to this later on because I need to dig a little bit more. Okay. This part here is, I think, one of the biggest things to come from this so far. No, not the biggest things. One of the most interesting things to come from this and so far. Remember I told you to remember that Comey locks things in his desk drawer or puts them in his desk drawer, stored it in his desk. And then what happens is after James Comey is fired, Donald Trump orders that entire office be locked down and he can't go back to it. So they do that, supposedly. And then in SSA, a supervisory special agent is assigned to keep guard of the office, make sure that nobody goes in and that anybody that comes out is cataloging what they find in there piece by piece. So they have to go through and clean out Comey's office, designate what is personal, designate what is private, what is government, catalog everything, and then give it to the proper places, right? This SSA says there were no memos in any of the desks. There were no memos in any drawer of any desk in James Comey's office. But there were memos placed in drawers in desks because Comey tells us that he put them in there. So Comey's in California. He can't get into his office because they lock it on him. They say you're not allowed back here. Go home, take a hike. And there's a supervisory special agent assigned to make sure that doesn't happen. Then all of a sudden, a few days later, Rybicki speaks to Comey on the phone. He gets off the phone with Comey, and then magically, the memos are in the possession of the chief of staff, who was outside of Jim Comey's office. So who went into Comey's office unauthorized, took this stuff out of his desk, and moved them outside? Number one. Number two, were they initially trying to hide these? Yes. And why? And then did Comey say, the jig is up, guys? And so Rybicki said, well, we better go back and cover our tracks now because otherwise we've got problems. And he had a nice conversation with James Comey and they worked it all out. And then all of a sudden Rybicki was like, oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. Silly me. I thought you only wanted what was inside of his office, not what the stuff is that we have outside here that has to do with him. Throughout this entire thing, Comey states that the special counsel he wants is to find out if there were tapes he wanted to find out if there were actually tapes of what he said. So he was trying to spur on a special counsel to find these tapes. I think that's bull. Why does he care so much about tapes? Why does he care so much about the tapes? What's the big deal? If he has tapes, they're going to say both ends of the conversation. It's not like he's going to be able to be like, Trump's going to be like, I have tapes, and they only have James Comey's half of the conversation. It's ridiculous. Now, this part of it, this is their excuse for everything. Unfortunately, their version of what our country should look like is one where there's authoritarianism and socialism and it's a dictatorship where unelected bureaucrats run the show and get to make decisions about what the rest of us minions get to do with ourselves. That's really not the way it's supposed to work. Comey told us He needed to do this because it was something meaning leak. He was, quote, uniquely situated to do because he was a private citizen. By speaking out or enabling someone else to, it would, quote, change the game and create, quote, extraordinary pressure on the leadership of the DOJ, which Comey did not trust, to appoint someone who the country could trust to get the tapes. When asked whether he considered the disclosure of this information would significantly affect FBI equities, he told the IG that he would, quote, I would frame it differently, as an issue of, quote, incredible importance to the nation as a whole. The tapes. Comey said he took the actions he took because, quote, he was doing something I had to do if I love this country and if I love the Department of Justice and I love the FBI. It just makes me want to vomit. Like, who the hell do you think you are, dude? What? There's more, but I don't even want to remember. I don't even want to read it. So we now know, even by Comey's admission, that the president didn't even know there was an investigation into Flynn. So this is all nonsense. This whole May article is complete nonsense, okay? Doesn't mean anything. This is just political posturing about please let Flynn go. This whole thing was a political stunt by James Comey. During all of this next part here, I want you guys to remember that James Comey still has memos in his safe at home, personal memos that he has not told anybody about. This is during 2017, after that FBI, the May 16th article in the New York Times about Flynn is published. The FBI receives a number of congressional inquiries and requests for copies of these memos. In the same time frame, a lot of committees are asking the Comey to come in and testify. And Comey says that he agreed to testify and he told the FBI about it, and the hearing was scheduled for June 8th, 2017. I remember it like it was yesterday, unfortunately. Because the hearing would be open, the FBI needed to make a clear determination whether there was any classified information in the memos before he testified. And Comey requested that the FBI allow him to review the memos prior to the hearing so he could prepare a written statement and refresh his recollection. He has them all. He has them all in his personal safe. But he makes them go through this process, bring them to him at his home, stand there and watch him read them on his back porch, and then hand them back. Here they state that they relied on their classification experience from the Clinton email case to make determinations on what the memos were like. What classifications need to go into these memos. So just to give you a quick timeline refresh, Comey gets fired. He's already stored all of these, quote, personal memos in his personal safe. The FBI has already gone to his house after he's fired to retrieve his belongings that were of work affiliated. He has a couple of skiffs in his house. They have to get all that stuff out, whatever equipment is there and everything else. And the FBI agents come in. He doesn't give them any of the memos he has in his safe. They leave. After that happens, he's called to testify. After he leaks these memos to his attorneys, he sends them to them. And then the attorneys leak to the New York Times, and the New York Times prints detrimental information to the country and to the president. And then everybody reaches out to try and get copies of these memos because now they've been alerted to the presence of the memos by the New York Times. And then they figure out, okay, well, all these people are requesting these memos. So they go and the small group sits down, McCabe and Strzok and Page and all of them, and they look at themselves and they say, we have a very important job to do, guys. We've got to retroactively classify these memos in the right way. We need to make sure that we have to redactions where we need them, that we don't let any information that's not classified out, but at the same time, we can't classify anything that may hurt our buddy Jim Comey here, because if we classify these in a certain way, he could get in trouble for leaking classified information and something, whatever. I don't think they followed that last bit of advice because they did classify them anyway. But Jim Comey has copies of these things and then makes the FBI physically bring copies of these things to him so that he can read them while they watch. Just saying. I do need a bottle of wine. I need 3 bottles of wine. I need 4 bottles of wine. If I drink 4 bottles of wine, I might not make it to the podcast tomorrow. Moving right along. Page told the IG that they all believed Comey had intended to write the memos in an unclassified way and that his intent was, quote, meaningful because he authored the documents. But our objective was, our objective was to protect the FBI and not the director. That's their objective? That's your objective? Really? It is your objective to protect the FBI and not the director or former director. Really? Gross. As the group deliberated how much they wanted to protect Comey in terms of classification, they also declined to take any notes on their meetings. They didn't take any notes at all when they were sitting in there talking about what they were going to classify or not. Here I tell everybody that I still need to do another pass while I place them in a timeline and all that stuff because it's a huge story. And then I start to talk about Paige making copies of the memos at the same time as she was talking to the INSD and Inspector General about what was going on with McCabe's leaks to the Wall Street Journal. Finch, again, broke that down in the telegram room called the library. Robert Mueller asked for personal memos that... Oh, here we go. This one. Now, nobody at the FBI knew that James Comey had these memos in his safe. Nobody knew about it. They figured it out when they sat down to watch him testify on television. And then they were like, oh my God. No, I'm wrong. They figured out that he had given the memos to his attorneys when they watched television and saw him testifying. And then they ran to the attorney and they were like, whoa, dude, you've got these memos or a memo? And as a matter of fact, even in here, Comey remarks like, they ask him, why didn't you tell them about the rest of the memos that you had given to people? And he goes, well, they didn't ask. They didn't ask. That's why the questions in these hearings are so important. The SSA told the OIG that Comey didn't indicate that he had shared the memos out with anyone outside of the FBI or that there may be an unauthorized disclosure of classified information. The supervisory special agent also said that Comey didn't indicate that he considered the memos to be his personal property. When asked whether the FBI's classification markings raised any concerns for Comey about his storage and transmission of the memos, Comey said, sure, yeah. 2 things ran through my mind. Immediately, it's like, could I be wrong? Which is something I'm always trying to ask myself. And if they're classified, what are the implications for that? Because I stored and transmitted. Yeah. Comey told the IG that he understood the FBI would likely conduct an investigation concerning the unauthorized disclosure of classified information, and he thought that's totally reasonable. However, Comey told the IG that he voluntarily gave his signed originals of memos 2, 4, 6, and 7 to the SSA at his house that day, not because he had concerns they contained classified information, but because, quote, Special Counsel Robert Mueller asked for them. How did he know about them? Nobody knew about these personal memos that he kept in his safe. Nobody knew about them, but Mueller did? How did Mueller know about them? When did Comey talk to Mueller? So here's another time. I have to take this and go into the Mueller report and try and look in the footnotes for when Jim Comey spoke to, when the 302 for James Comey was. Task. Somebody figure out when the 302 for James Comey was written. If it's in the footnotes of the Mueller report. I would really like to know. Probably all of them aren't there. I'm going to take a brief pause. Hold on. Like literally seconds. Okay. Is that it? And that's it. And that's what I got on my thread. That's all the tidbits I pulled out from the basic thread, like the basic report, like not cross-referencing dates or looking at other investigations or pulling in other facts, etc. And there were a few other interesting things that came across too. I gotta tell ya, that's interesting. Here we go. This was another one that came out today. There's two things that came out today. There was another IG report that I'm not even going to mention right now because I don't want to lose my crap. And then there was another one, a vault release about Harvey Weinstein that I haven't even opened. So there was two other things. Hold on, because there's something else here. I retweeted it from Huber. Oh, this was cute. I got a Chick-fil-A yogurt. Let's get to the bottom of it. Get it? Get it? I just want to tell you guys something. This report is masterfully well done. It is very well done. If this is literally just about a period of months where there were memos taken and put places. I can tell you right now, this FISA abuse report is going to be at least 1,000 pages long. There's no way it's shorter than that. And the good men and women at the Office of Inspector General are giving us many hints in here of what's to come. Not only that, they do a damn good job. Damn good job. Oh, bye, Scandinavia. That's pretty cool. Denmark. That's really awesome. That's it, guys. I'm just going to end it. I'm going to end it here. Stay grounded. Stay focused. I'm not here again telling you that everybody in the world is going to be indicted, and I know it for a fact. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone 3 weeks from now. I do know what is happening, and that is that there are investigations ongoing right now. There is no doubt about it. I stake I put everything I have on that. I'm telling you. You guys all know it too. You don't need to hear me tell you it. Just breathe. Facts, not feelings. Facts, not emotion. You know, if you want to be upset and angry, that's fine. Wipe it off. There's a lot of work to do here, guys. There's a lot of work to do. And I've done this in the past, and I'll do it again. I don't just sit on my ass when things don't go the right way. It's not in my blood. I care too much about this. I care too much about our country. I care too much about the direction things are going. I care too much about the media, or what's become of the media, and that's why I'm trying to change the media. So I hope this was helpful for everybody. Thank you for letting me vent a little bit because I needed that. It's just too much to hold inside sometimes. I love all of you guys. Some people have been asking how they can support Uncover DC. So instead of supporting me, I'll say support my company. You guys can go to uncoverdc.com and there's a support button. If you guys feel so inclined, you can help out the organization. And that's about it for today. Take care. And I will talk to you soon.